All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Gamer Weekly. With me today is Adam and Bannon from WayForward Games. Thank you guys so much for coming onto the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
You mispronounce our names though. It's not Bannon. Sorry.
How is it supposed to be pronounced?
Bannon.
Bannon.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. Just trying to confuse you. How's it going?
For a second there, I was almost like, did I actually say his name wrong?
Yeah.
But yes, thank you guys so much for coming onto the show. I greatly appreciate it. I am a huge fan of your guys' games. I am apparently really bad at one of the Shantae games. I think it was Half Genie Hero because I got stuck, and I don't know how I got stuck. But it was a really good game, and I like the whole like Metrovania style to it.
When in doubt, just belly dance your way out of any situation.
Fine. I tried to do that, and now I'm not allowed in the Walmart here. So, I guess, sorry, I guess the place that we should start here is from the beginning. So, how did you guys get into game development, and how did WayForward Games come into fruition?
So, WayForward, this is Adam. WayForward has been around for almost 30 years. I think it's been about 29 years so far. I've been with the company for about half that time. And yeah, they just started, their very first game was a Mickey Mouse game back in around 90 or 91 on Genesis, I think. And then after that, they did a lot of PC educational titles, and about halfway through their existence, they published, or actually we developed Shantae for the Game Boy Color. And then ever since then, we've kind of done a mix of licensed games, some of them very kid-oriented, like SpongeBob and Barbie, stuff like that. And then also some cooler ones like Contra and Aliens, and done a lot of console work. We've done a little bit of mobile, a little bit of VR, a little bit of everything. But yeah, it's a cool place to work. So I'm here as a director. I've been here about 15 years, and most recent product that I worked on was River City Girls. And Bannon is sitting next to me, and he has River City experience even before that.
Yeah, I worked on River City Ransom Underground before this, and that was kind of like my resume for video games. And from that, WayForward hired me, and I've been here for maybe 3 years.
I think so.
Yeah, around 3 years. I kind of do a little of everything.
So, do you guys know about the how rare the Shantae Game Boy Color game is?
Yeah, I had a copy. I don't remember how many. I think I heard at one point how many copies there were in existence, and it was only a few thousand. But I was a geeky WayForward super fan before I came here. I remember I entered a poetry contest, I entered an art contest, and I won a copy of the Shantae Game Boy Color game way back when. And then I think I also bought it the day it came out, and I remember I had to go to like 3 different Game Stops to find a copy. But yeah, it just keeps going up on eBay, and I still have my like 1 or 2 of my copies around somewhere, but I'm always amazed at how much people are willing to repay for that thing.
Like, it is now the most expensive Game Boy Color game out of all of them. And for me, it's like that white whale. Like, if I saw that game, and I can't pay $600 for a game, but if I ever see it, it's like, ooh, is this going to be the day that I finally own this game? Because I'm trying to go for like a complete Game Boy collection, and then when I didn't realize how expensive some of these games were and how weird some of them were. Like Amazing Tater, like who wants to own Amazing Tater for Game Boy? But it goes for $300, so somebody's gonna pay that. It's not.
Yeah, I had heard. I don't know how accurate it is, but I'd heard that part of the reason it got really popular, aside from it being pretty rare and not a huge run by Capcom, was the programmer on it, Jimmy, did a lot of really crazy, very like low-level hardware stuff, so that when people tried to emulate it, Shantae was always kind of one of those games that didn't play properly on emulation. So that kind of added to the mystique and people wanting the actual physical original copy.
We actually had Nicolas Cage try to retrieve it out of our vault a couple times.
He got close.
Yeah, valiant effort.
So why would so since Shantae was kind of like a more like rare thing, like what made them want to turn that into like a big franchise for themselves? Because to me, I feel like Shantae is like the face of WayForward Games.
Yeah, she's definitely, I think you could consider her our mascot, more or less. We have a couple games we've done close to as many with, like Mighty Switch Force has had 3 games, and then a couple collections. But no, it's basically our creative director, Matt Bozon, who oversees all the directors like Bannon and myself at the company. That's his creation, one of his many creations here. And he's also directed all of the Shantae games so far. So I think he just loves that world and loves those characters. And, you know, the way that the company works is we'll do a mix of licensed games, like River City is a licensed game, and we'll do original stuff like Shantae. And our boss, Voldy Way, is just really open to kind of letting us, the director team, work on different types of projects. So I think Matt just always has another Shantae story to tell. And in fact, the latest one just came out on Apple Arcade 3 or 4 days ago, like just last week. And that's the 5th one. So yeah, he cranks them out because he keeps having more stories to tell with that character.
So Shantae is more like a passion project for him.
Yeah, for sure. Like anytime you see projects at WayForward that are original creations, it's usually from one of the designer directors here having an idea, getting everybody excited about it, and then we just dive right in. The license stuff is kind of all over the place. Some of that will just come our way as, hey, we need somebody to do a game for this, and some of it, like River City Girls, will be us saying, hey, we love these kind of games and trying to pursue them. So it's a little bit of everything, but definitely with the original games, that's usually somebody's passion project at the company.
Are there any license projects that you guys would have liked to have pursued, but maybe there was like a scheduling conflict, or maybe it was just maybe too big in scale?
Not that I can think of that we're prohibited. There's a lot of stuff we still want to do and we'd love to get back to someday. There's also stuff that we'd love to revisit. Like we did one Aliens game. Love to do another Aliens game. I think that, you know, that worked really well for us. I can't think of anywhere we wanted to do it and then kind of, you know, just weren't able to get there. Most of it kind of turns out to be, well, we'll do a pitch or we'll do a mock-up image. And then if it gets passed on, it still exists. So we'll pitch it to the, you know, the owner a few years later. And eventually sometimes those can turn into things like with the case of River City Girls. We were talking about that with Arc System Works for well over a year before it actually kicked off production. And that was just back and forth and coming up with concepts and saying, hey, what if we did this? And what if this was the character? So there's none I can think of where it just got outright killed. It just kind of sits on a shelf and hopefully gets picked up one day.
What would you do for the Alien game, hypothetically?
I mean, I had a whole pitch that I had already arted up and designed for that. Am I even allowed to?
No, well, I mean, not specific to the pitch, but like, so I directed the first Aliens game, and it was really cool to just play up the creepiness and play up the, you know, not seeing the enemies, having them pop out of corners, the isolation of you know, being unaware of what's around you. If you were to direct the next Alien game here, Bannon, what sort of stuff would you be interested in playing with?
Definitely lighting, if anything. I think that's one thing that Aliens game really needs to capture to get that mood. Yeah, just the lighting. I mean, these things hide in the darkness, and I really want to capture that kind of like mood and that kind of tension.
Because I started playing Resident Evil 2, and like with the Mr. X character constantly like stalking you things. I'm like, oh man, wouldn't it be so cool to have an Alien game where the alien is stalking you? And then I'm like, they already made that game. It was
Yeah.
Alien Isolation, and I forgot to play that game. I was really looking forward to it, but people were like, it's too scary. Like, I couldn't be that scary. And then I started playing Resident Evil 2. I'm like, this game is scary. I don't know if I could play that.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it would definitely play up Aliens more than a single Alien experience.
So it'd be more, not really.
More action based, yeah.
Yeah, like action horror kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the first one we did, it was called Infestation on Nintendo DS. We really based it off of the James Cameron movie. So there's a running thing in it where you can recruit new colonial Marines, and then when they die, it's permadeath, and then you're constantly like getting more Marines to fill the void. And that was kind of the thing that we noticed rewatching his movie before production, is it's all about making you love all these characters and then just killing them one by one. So we structured the whole kind of life system around that. And I think that's really, really one of the fun things when working on a game, is looking at the reference material, either the movie or the TV show or comic or previous games, and deciding what to pull over and how to interpret that sort of stuff.
Because I feel like there was another. For some reason, I keep thinking, did you guys do the Mummy Demastered, or was that somebody else?
Yeah, that was my first project here.
Okay, yeah, that seemed like such a out of nowhere thing, but people really like. I haven't gotten to play it yet, but that was one that I really wanted to check out. But uh, I think that's one of those few times where the game becomes way better than the movie that it's based on, because it seemed like everyone didn't like the Mummy movie, at least like the latest one.
Well, it was kind of based on the movie, but the way that we did it is it wasn't based on the Tom Cruise character, because it would have we that was a pretty quick production, and it would have been a lot of hoops to jump through in terms of nailing his likeness and what the character can and can't do. So we went with kind of the generic sort of prodigium agents, which are the guys that like investigate, the mummy and all these supernatural stuff. And it ended up actually helping, yeah, because when the movie came out and it didn't get the kind of reviews they were expecting, it helped our game have its own unique identity. I think if our game had been, just a one-to-one recreation of the movie, it would have, tanked pretty quickly. But because it felt like it was more like an offshoot thing, it let players kind of enjoy it without really drawing the comparisons to the movie it was based on.
Why did you want to call it demastered?
I think that's just a term that that some people use for when you do things in pixel art. So this was like, it's not specifically Super Nintendo or arcade style. It's, we don't have the restrictions anymore of color count and tile count. But since it's an old school visual, we had a game a number of years ago called DuckTales Remastered, where remastering was kind of making it all high resolution. So their idea was to flip it and call this demastered, as in like making it feel less modern.
Because it is a big bombastic special effects, like extravaganza movie, and then it's just taken down to this Super Nintendo kind of level.
Yep.
And then, speaking of like Super Nintendo style level, you guys just released a new game not too long ago called River City Girls. Can you guys tell me about that?
I have no idea what that game is.
Oh, yeah. It's like isn't it like an open world crafting survival horror game?
Yeah. But we took out a lot of those elements, and we
decided to make it a brawler.
Yeah. Like classic beat 'em up with RPG
the crafting
elements
and the cooking and the dating sim. All that's fun. Yeah. So River City Girls. So Bannon and I teamed up on that, and it's cool. So people in the U.S. kind of know about River City. We've had a few games, River City Ransom. Bannon worked on Underground. Some of the games tie in like Super Dodgeball and Crash and the Boys. A lot of like NES games. But in Japan, it's huge. In Japan, it's called Kunio-kun, and they've got over 50 different titles that they've worked on over the past 30 years. So basically, that was one of those games where we always loved the very first one, and we thought, well, that would be a great series for WayForward to kind of reinvent it. So we put together a pitch. Most of WayForward's games, licensed or original, tend to star girls. Just that's kind of our shtick. So we pitched Arc System Works, who owns the brand, on a girl-focused version. These two girls were actually from the Super Nintendo game in Japan, and they could do a lot of the attacks and a lot of the moves. So they were just these really kick-ass, awesome girls back in that game. We pitched a new game starring them, and Arc really liked it. And after a couple of discussions, we started going into production. And so we worked on the game with them, and the publisher in US and Europe is WayForward, and then Arc, who owns the brand, is publishing in Japan and Asia. And yeah, we finished the game up recently. It's came out a few weeks ago, and people seem to dig it.
So it is based in the River City universe.
Yes, it does exist in that River City, that kind of Kunio-kun Double Dragon. Like it's all kind of that one shared Technos universe.
So what is the game about? Because I know that it's a brawler. What's really like the story going on in it?
The story is really pretty goofy, like a lot of WayForward games are. So you have these two high school girls, Kyoko and Misako, and they get a text message that shows their boyfriend's getting kidnapped. And then it essentially just becomes this crazy adventure where they're tearing across town, beating up everybody they encounter, looking for information on who has their boyfriends. And then, within that, we just really had a lot of fun playing with all these existing characters. The Kunio-kun brand in Japan has hundreds and hundreds of these characters, usually all playable in their games. And so we had probably about like 50 or 60 cameos from existing characters, and it was fun to kind of reinterpret them in the WayForward style and have them as NPCs or bosses or enemies. But yeah, it's basically just these two crazy actiony girls tearing across town, beating everybody up in search of their kidnapped boyfriends.
I do have to say, this is when we learned that Arc System Works are massive fans of River City Ransom. Like, they know all the lore. They knew they were bringing out some obscure cameo characters, and I was thoroughly impressed with their knowledge. I thought I knew a lot about River City, but they kind of schooled me on that.
So with making a brawler style game, how do you mix it up to where, because I know that a lot of beat 'em up games can kind of get a little repetitious over what, like, how do you get to engage the player more with doing a brawler style game?
Well, it is a brawler style game in the sense that you are fighting people, but most brawlers, you move left to right, and then like the Langoliers have eaten the left side of the screen. You can never go back that direction. So this is more of a brawler RPG kind of open world game. You're leveling up, you're getting new moves, you can go to the dojo, you can buy new moves. So it shouldn't feel repetitive. And this is just one character too. You can switch to the next character, and then you can start leveling up that character and start earning new moves for this character. And if you want to go back to some area where you fought a specific group of enemies, you can go do that. You can go over and do a quest in a different room. You can go across town and do another mission or quest. So it keeps it from being stagnant because you're constantly moving, but you have the freedom of where you want to move to.
Structurally, it's actually, it looks like an old arcade brawler, like a Final Fight or a Streets of Rage, but it actually structurally is closer to like a Metroidvania, like the Mummy game, because like Bannon said, you're doing quests, you're bouncing around town, you're looking for secret items. And I think one of the other things that we did that paid off well and maybe made it so it's not feeling so repetitious is Bannon and I put a lot of effort into making it feel like a real world. So we're not just using a couple of tile sets like, okay, we're in the street level and now it's just 8 stages that look identical. Of the like 75, 80 or so unique scenes in the game, they're all pretty unique. So you have different shopping areas, you have different sections of town, you have bathrooms, you have bedrooms, penthouses. Like almost every scene you go into is brand new art you've never seen before. And then it also kind of has a little bit of everything. Like shopping is very important in the brand, and there's 20 or so stores you can go into. So really just making it feel like it's this big, believable world that you are actually inhabiting and you want to explore, as opposed to just a couple of linear stages strung together. I think that helps a lot too with making players want to stick around longer and not getting burned out.
Yeah, the stages themselves, they're not flat. They have a lot of variety to them too, aesthetically, but also playability.
I've noticed too with a lot of the WayForward games is that you guys do the Metroidvania genre pretty frequently. Like, what makes you guys want to do that genre? And is that usually like the mindset going into a game, like, all right, we want to make it a Metroidvania style game, or is it kind of shift around and just kind of get a feel for what you think you guys want to do with the game?
I think it helps when you can layer on secondary objectives to not bore your player. And I think especially with a brawler where you're unlocking new moves, but at the end of the day you're using the same collection of punches and kicks and attacks over and over. That's going to burn them out pretty quickly. So giving the player choices, like good game design is just all about choices, giving the player choices. So having them think, where am I supposed to go? What do I want to focus on first? Do I want to complete this objective or do I want to complete this one? Do I want to grind a little bit? Do I want to speed through this? Having a more open structure, I think, just feels like it adds a depth to it that makes it a more immersive experience, as opposed to, if it's just left to right and you're just doing your one mechanic. That can sometimes work, but it's gonna always, even if you do it right, it's always gonna feel like a more shallow experience. So again, we just laying on that Metroidvania style, which even the earliest games had some sort of a structure of that. It wasn't as deep as the later games and as deep as ours, but it still had that kind of like, I'm running around town looking for this guy or looking for this object or looking for this boss battle. I think it just adds a depth and keeps things interesting for the player because they're making decisions as opposed to just reacting to enemies that come on screen.
So do you like Metroid more or Castlevania more?
I mean, if I had to choose, it probably would be Metroid.
That's interesting. I would be more of a Castlevania guy.
Like aesthetically, I love Castlevania more. Like I love the horror more than the sci-fi. But Metroid, yeah, it's the kind of the thing about discovery. Like in Metroid, you might see a thing and you have no idea how to get to this thing.
Right.
And then 2 hours later, you're like, that's how I get to that thing.
Yeah,
that feeling of discovery always got to me instead of just whipping enemies.
It's interesting, yeah, because I think when you split, especially where they've evolved to kind of over time, if you split Metroidvania to Metroid and Castlevania, the Metroid games tend to be more like game design, 101. It's like, here's how you telegraph stuff, here's how to tease the player, here's getting them excited and keeping the messaging clear, versus the Castlevania games, especially when they went to like the DS one, it was just all flavor stuff. It's all like, oh, I found the rose, or I found the secret couple having an affair, or stuff like that. It's all flavory type stuff. So yeah, I love both of them, but yeah, it's interesting that one of them is just like very tight, very like incredibly well structured game design, and then the other one got a little more loose and a little more kind of thematic over the years.
Yeah, because I actually just recently played through all the Game Boy Advance and DS Castlevania games, and they're just so good.
Yeah.
Well, like Harmony of Dissonance was like, okay, it's a little too easy. It was weird playing like Circle of the Moon and then go into Harmony, and it's like, all right, it just went from like ass tearing hard to all right, this feels like a kid's game. And then I felt like with Aria of Sorrow, that's where I felt like they had this concrete idea of this is what I would want from a Castlevania game.
Yeah, then, Dawn of Sorrow is my favorite Castlevania game, and I love Soma as a character, and I love that world. I think that was kind of the richest version of Castlevania since Symphony, and I love just all the weird stuff like throwing the meat outside to make Bigfoot come. It's just all that weird, wacky kind of Easter egg stuff I think was really fun.
You should try Bloodstained.
That's right. Yeah, we made one of those games recently.
Hey, wait a minute. Bloodstained looks a lot like Castlevania. I still have to play Bloodstained, and I wanted to play the 8-bit one too, but I haven't had the chance to do it because I'm kind of broke. But eventually, I wanted to get the Switch version, but everyone's like, Bloodstained on the Switch plays terribly. Don't get it. And all right, I guess I'll get it on PS4 then or PC. But yeah, that's one of those like rare instances where the Kickstarter game actually worked because a lot of people are like, oh, it's gonna be another Mighty Number Nine situation, which I feel bad for the guy because that guy wanted Mighty Number Nine to do really well, and it's just I felt like it might have been too many cooks in the kitchen type situation, or so I didn't play it, so I can't just sit here and be like, oh, Mighty Number Nine, that was a terrible game. Like I didn't play it. I'm not like super into Mega Man. I mean, I like it, but I'm not like I need this Mega Man clone-esque game. But then Bloodstain, I'm like, all right, that's the game that I kind of want to see where this goes because this actually looks pretty interesting, and I'm happy to see that a game like that worked out well.
Yeah,
If you guys,
we came in toward the end of production and were able to help out and you know, Iga-san, the director of Bloodstain, directed Symphony of the Night and so many of those DS and GBA Castlevania games he was involved with. So yeah, it was really amazing for us to kind of be, you know, working directly with someone as integral to the genre as that. And I think it was also, yeah, like you mentioned, that it's hard to do a Kickstarter game because, you know, as soon as you finish, game dev takes a long time. Game dev takes, you know, often many years. And I think a lot of just typical gamers don't really realize how slow a process it is. But once you do something as public as a Kickstarter, you're on the clock and you just have everybody saying, when is the game coming out? When is it done? So, you know, we did that once before with Shantae Half Genie Hero. And then we were able to help a little bit with the tail end of Bloodstained. And I'm really glad that both of those games came out well and were well received, because I think, you know, Kickstarter needs that sort of validation. You know, the more games that come out looking really good. I know I'm really excited about Shenmue 3. That's looking fantastic from the trailers I've seen. The more games that come out and people say, hey, this worked, the more people are going to be willing to go back to that platform and fund, you know, new projects. Versus if there are games that come out that aren't as well received, you know, people might just decide to hold on to their money.
do you think Shenmue 3 could appeal to a modern audience? Because I know that even back then, Shenmue was very niche, but it was breaking a lot of boundaries that were set before because no one had ever seen a game that worked like Shenmue. So do you think that people nowadays would like a Shenmue 3? I know.
It's hard.
I mean,
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, for me, like I was a big enough fan that I imported Shenmue 2 from Europe and I hex edited my save file to work from a US version to a European version. So for me, it's right up my alley. I look at it and it's like, oh yeah, I'm having, you know, flashbacks to 20 years ago and how the first two games were. I don't know. I guess we'll see how people react to it that haven't played the first two. They were definitely very special, very deep, immersive games. So hopefully that pans out, and hopefully a new audience likes it as much as people did back on the Dreamcast.
I haven't played too much of it, but I'm wondering if Yakuza series already does
That's a good point.
what Shenmue did, but better because they've had so many years.
I feel like with the Yakuza series, it's more over the top than Shenmue. Like I feel like Shenmue is like it's like Yakuza, but it's just a guy, and he doesn't have crazy, almost superpower esque ways of doing things, and uh,
But I'm wondering how enticing that is to a modern audience when you look at like Fast and Furious, the first movie, and compared to now, where they're like superheroes.
Right.
I'm waiting for them to just launch cars into space, and they're doing like Rainbow Road esque stuff, like Fast and Furious, Rainbow Road.
Soon.
Honestly, I think I would watch it. I think the last Fast and Furious movie I watched though was Tokyo Drift, and people were like, "That one's more set in like the future," and I'm like, "What?" Because there's like a character that causes like a huge conflict in the story. Like this character dies in this movie, but he shows up in a different movie, and I'm like, maybe they should have just retconned Tokyo Drift because it's not a very good movie. Then again, like, are Fast and Furious like are those movies good?
I have no idea. Only saw the first one.
Hmm. They'll have to we'll have to watch all these movies, guys, and we'll have to come back and discuss this. I feel like this
Yeah,
could be a really pressing issue.
absolutely.
Uh, there was one other thing I wanted to ask you guys too. This kind of goes back a little bit of what we were talking about before with the new Shantae game being on Apple Arcade, and Apple Arcade being like a subscription-based service for iOS devices. Do you see that being like the next thing for? I mean, Xbox has kind of dabbled in it with the Xbox Live Game Pass, but do you see that becoming like a more um, norm thing with games in general, just all turning into like subscription based things?
I I think it's probably going to be both. I think people love stuff like even going back to like PS2 and WiiWare and stuff. I mean, I think people like getting stuff digitally, getting stuff where they're on a subscription model, but I don't think that's ever going to fully replace the excitement of going to a store and seeing the brand new Zelda game when it first comes out. So I don't see one overtaking the other. I know that with on the movie side, it's getting more like that with Disney Plus and HBO Plus and all these different places all launching their own separate subscription services. But if I had to guess, I would guess that you're going to see more robust libraries and memberships per platform on games, but I don't think it's ever going to fully replace going to the store and buying that brand new $50, $60 AAA game.
I think there's going to be a healthy mix. Like a subscription, you can try out all these games. With buying a physical copy of a game, you kind of have to take a gamble. It's $50, $60 that you just throw down, and you might play that game for a day or two because it's not what you wanted. And then you could return it to the store and get like $15 for credit. So I think, yeah, it'll be a healthy mix, especially like watching people freaking out over physical copies of River City Girls. Like people just want that physical thing in their hand. They want that thing on their shelf. So it'll be a mix.
I think that it's, if anything, it could potentially just go the way of like how Spotify and Google Play Music and all that stuff are, where the ones that you truly want, you're gonna probably already buy something like that. Like, this is your favorite movie. Like, yeah, you're probably not gonna sit there and hope that Netflix someday has it again. You're probably just gonna have like the Blu-ray copy of that. I think if anything, it could bring more people to maybe like stranger ideas of games. Like I played a game actually just like 20 minutes ago called Hidden Folks, and it was just like a not really like a hide and seek game. It's more of like a back like when kids read highlights and you circle in like try to find the umbrella, like it was something like that. And like I don't feel like a lot of people would gravitate towards it immediately because it was like a paid app game, but I know that it's critically acclaimed, but I know that's just it's not like a common uh, game that you see that does really well from the start. Like if anything, yeah, it could just be like an entry point of, cool, we can play like these weird games and just see where it goes. Because I mean, back in the day for music, people would be like, oh, I only listen to rock and electronic, and now people like, I listen to everything because there's no risk to it. You can always go back to like your safety zone.
Kind of the threshold for what it takes to get games produced now has dropped. So, tools become more available. Going way back when, if you wanted a game on Nintendo or Genesis or whatever, it was rarefied air to be in the company that could do that. Now, you can make your own games with just a couple of programs, with just a couple of people. We know people that make games just one person, top to bottom. And then, even the companies like Nintendo and Microsoft, they're warming up more and more to small indie studios and people that are single, person developers. And so it's interesting because I don't think that the AAA games are going to go anywhere. I think there's always going to be, lots of craziness over Borderlands 3 and Gears of War 5 and stuff like that. But it's interesting to see all the weird little experimental games and the ones that are trying out new things and breaking genres in addition to those. So yeah, I think it's really good. And WayForward, we're kind of nicely nestled in the middle. So we can do things that feel like a larger production, like a Bloodstained, or we can do things that feel like a much smaller production, like some of our mobile games, and we get to kind of dabble in both universes, and it's fun to to go one way or the other depending on what we're interested in at the moment.
Because I've been trying to like adopt a mindset now of not saying that a game is good or bad. I'm trying to, and I mean it's hard to break tradition, and hard not to just write a game off completely like, oh, this game's terrible, I hate this game, or this game's great because I said it's great. Like trying to find interesting and uninteresting games. Like a game can be good, but you won't remember playing it, and then a game can be bad, but you're like, but it had so many cool ideas to it. Like I know that a highly sought after PS2 games, Haunting Ground.
Yep.
People were like, it's the mechanics for it are kind of weird, and some of the enemies are kind of cheap. But like the idea of you relying on this dog, and Rule Bros did the same thing as well. But having this just different style of like it's familiar, but it's different. I think that just makes it interesting and makes it stand out more. Like I think rather play a game that stands out than a one that kind of just blends in with the background.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would much rather play a less polished experimental game that's trying new things with the genres like Haunting Ground, as opposed to something that's just a total retread but happens to be very polished.
Like I wasn't super into like turn-based role-playing games, and then I played. I know that we're talking about like uninteresting and interesting, but I tried out Dragon Quest, and I thought that game was super interesting because it had really cool characters, and I ended up playing like 7 of the 10 mainline games, and they're fantastic. And then I played Persona, and that game, it felt familiar. It felt like Pokemon in a way, but it wasn't. It was like this dark, weird game, and I'm like, it's good and it's interesting, and I'm just so happy to see something like that even come around because and get a following out of it. Like I feel like people were like, when Persona 5 came out, people were just going absolutely bananas over that game for obvious good reasons. 'Cause it's
Yeah, and I think also like the more you can put interesting design stuff in your game, even if it's not the main point of the game, will get people interested in your game. So for example, I thought that the respawn system in Shovel Knight was fantastic, where you're losing money, coming back and risking to get your money back, that sort of a thing. And then also breaking the checkpoints for more money. All that was really clever. In River City Girls, one of the things we added was when you die in a 2-player game, your little angel floats out of your body, and your friend, if they're quick enough, can run over and stomp you back to life, basically kick your dead corpse, and the angel gets sucked back down. And that's been one of the things that people have really responded to positively. It's funny, it's weird, and it's very kind of in line with the brand. And it's not, a one-to-one of anything that had ever really been done before in previous games. So I think it's important to, whether you're doing, at the core of the game or even just little things like those, put some interesting stuff in there, and then that kind of helps build an audience and get people interested in your game.
that kind of reminds me of Cuphead as well, just like the way that you see their ghost come up and you got to grab their ghost before they float away. And like that was another game that was interesting, but I kept dying a lot, so I couldn't finish the game.
Yep.
But that's another one where I'm like, this is interesting. Like, how has no one ever done something like this? At least look like this game before. So yeah.
Yep.
One last question, and then I'll let you guys go. I tend to ask this to just about everybody that comes onto the show. So, being game developers, what what does game development mean to you? Like, what does making games like? What does that do for you guys?
I mean, for me, this is a job I want to do since I can remember playing video games. So this is something I was designing games when I was like 6 or 7 years old. So yeah, this is just like little tiny Bannon's dream job. So it it scratches the itch of being creative. Is that like creative as far as like coming up with gameplay, coming up with something interesting for people to enjoy, drawing, um, just writing. It's almost like filmmaking that's interactive for me. So it scratches that itch of why I even moved to LA in the first place.
Yeah, and I think it's funny that you mentioned some of that, because I think if you look at any of the directors at WayForward, there's similarities. Like, all of us were in third grade writing stats for characters and doing spreadsheets of like leveling up and stuff. It's just this innate thing. For me, what I love about game design is that there are no rules on what you need to have or not have. And two of my favorite games are Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, both by the same director. And they're almost opposite games. One of them is just boss battles and nothing else. And then the other one is just enemy and exploration and puzzles and nothing else. And it's like, you don't need to have all of the prerequisites just because, some AAA games or some classic games did. You can make it more about story. You can have no story at all. You can have any kind of real-time gameplay. You can come up with interesting menu-driven gameplay. And so for me, that's the exciting thing, is every opportunity we get, figuring out where we're going to have player engagement, what they're going to be doing and not doing, and just trying to make something that feels unique.
Makes sense. Like, yeah, no, those are great. I haven't played Ico in such a long time. That was like the first game I played on PS2 as a demo, and I'm like, what is this? Because I was so used to just games where you shoot things or you're doing platforming, and so seeing a game that's more artsy, I think, wasn't clicking with me. It's like, I think it was like 10 or 12 years old when that game came out. So I was like, it doesn't have cool shooty stuff. It's not a good game. And now I'm like, all right, I see what they're trying to do. I respect it.
Yep, definitely.
But yeah, so I guess to wrap this up, let's go through. Check out River City Girls, guys. Anyone out there that's listening.
And especially one thing with River City, I'm not sure how quickly the podcast is going up, but it's only up for sale for a few more days at Limited Run, the physical copy. So if you want a physical copy in the US or Europe, go to Limited Run Games really quickly and get that, because once that's gone, it's only going to be available digitally.
And those things sell out really quickly. Like, I tried to get the Bloodstained one, and I was like, oh, nope, not getting this one. Yeah. And then, oh yeah, check out their other games as well. Obviously, Mummy Demastered, all the Shantae games. If you have an iPhone, check out the Apple Arcade. Hopefully, we start seeing. Will Shantae come to Android at some point?
I'm not sure. That would be a question for our publishing department. I don't know.
Okay, so hopefully we see it on Android. And if you guys liked listening to this episode, check out the other episodes. I've got other people that, like we mentioned, Shovel Knight. They were on the show at one point, so check out that episode. It was pretty cool. We had a lot of fun with that one. And other ones as well. You can find on SoundCloud, YouTube, whatever. Whatever you prefer to listen on, it's probably on there, except for Spotify, because Spotify is a jerk. So whatever. Thank you guys so much for coming onto the show. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you, anyone out there who's listening. I also appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Justin.
Yes. All right. Go play River City Girls, guys, and you guys keep making cool games.
All right, we will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.